welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce to everybody my friend over the last couple of months, and we've developed a great working relationship together, Atiba Wade. And Atiba is going to talk to us today about the evolution of dryland and swimming over the past 10 to 20 years. He's going to talk about his experience working with athletes from all different facets of life. And we're going to talk a little bit about Atiba's story too, because he has one of the most unique and interesting stories in the sport of swimming. And I want to introduce you today, Atiba, and have you talk a little bit about your background. And I learned something interesting about you today. I learned that your father was instrumental in getting cable in the city of Philadelphia in certain areas.
Yes, that is true. Wade Cablevision from back in the day.
So that's where all your video and your cutting skills and all of that stuff, that's kind of in the blood.
Yeah, the video stuff, but the artistic side comes from my mom. She was an artist and a dancer, as well as very humanitarian. They're both social workers, very much into the community.
So in addition to being a dryland coach and having a lot of other things that you've been involved in, you've worked with the military and you've provided fitness programs for men and women in service. The other thing that you've done a little bit on the side is you were an actor for a pretty famous movie. Why don't you tell us all about that movie and your role in it and your role in the true story as well?
Well, the movie that I'm assuming you're talking about is Pride. It's about, it's based off of, when they say inspired by true events, it's inspired by the PDR swim team and under Coach Jim Ellis. I was a swim double in that movie. I wasn't necessarily an actor per se, but I would say that whenever you see the main character swimming correctly, that's me. And even like a little bit before that, or a little bit after that, I did do some other movie type stuff. Like for example, I don't know if you've seen the movie Shot Callers. I did a little cameo in that, and I played a prison guard. You'll see me for like 4 or 5 seconds. I get knocked down by the main character, and that's it. But yeah, Pride was the movie that I'm sure you're talking about, and it was a fantastic experience, and it's such an honor to not only be a part of that legacy, but to actually be able to contribute as an actual member of the movie. So that's something that is fantastic.
Yeah, you came up through that program with the likes of the Vreelands and all the great athletes who came through PDR. What was that experience like for you when you guys were breaking such new ground in our sport and really bringing the sport to communities that didn't necessarily have the scope to include swimming as an option? What was it like watching that and watching Jim go through the process?
Well, you knew that you were part of something special, first of all, because Jim just had a vision and also an expectation of excellence. So being involved with that in comparison to the other aspects of life that you may be in, you knew that you're dealing with a quality environment, and the friendships that you develop there, the camaraderie that gets developed there, just that alone, you know you're part of something special. Outside of that concept, when you know that as being like a predominantly African-American swim team, you know that you're kind of trailblazers in that sense. So being a part of that gives you a sense of dedication, it gives you a sense of motivation, but also it gives you a sense of obligation. And those three things really were the driving force as I got older, as you become more conscious of what it is that you're doing. Those three things were the driving force that continue to keep me going.
Yeah, what a fantastic story. And it's so neat that you played a role in that and then got to celebrate it, right, with your small role in Pride. I mean, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And you take your experience from PDR, Atiba, and you translate it into swimming for Jack Bowerly at the University of Georgia, where you were an NCAA finalist. What was it like going through Georgia back in those days as Jack was really building what would eventually become a powerhouse?
Well, that was definitely a fun experience. Jack is another Philadelphia guy, so we kind of, saw eye to eye in that way. and being a part of that as well. I mean, yeah, you're right. Jack built a powerhouse at University of Georgia, and being an All-American there, also with another fellow Bulldog, Michael Norman, who was who I basically followed to the University of Georgia from PDR. It was a great experience, and just being a part of that the whole college experience, the whole college dynamic, and being able to, and I knew that we were contributing something unique to the process, not just as a swimmer, but also as a person, and interacting with the other athletes who are still my great friends to this day. So I know that they had an effect on me, I had an effect on them. We all had an effect on the program to help push it forward.
One of the things that I love about you is, and we talk probably 2 or 3 times a week, you're so passionate about what you do. And I want to introduce some of the things that you're doing. But first, I want you to talk a little bit about the evolution of dryland in this country from the time where you were an age grouper into the practices that you use now. How have things changed, and what are you doing to innovate dryland as a whole?
Well, I'll start off with where I started. I started off in a place that we called the community room at Marcus Foster Swim Pool, and the community room was a concrete room, 4 walls, concrete floor. We were just doing push-ups, sit-ups, squat jumps, every body weight exercise imaginable. That's what we did in the community room, because my dad always said, when resources are minimal, skills need to be optimal. So we had minimal resources, but you're dealing with Coach Jim Ellis, and his skill level is optimal. So we took everything that we had and we made the best of it, and it made us better swimmers for it, because body weight exercises really are super important for age group swimmers. We want to now, just to jump forward a little bit and I'll come back, but now we're talking about, Olympic lifts, weightlifting, all this type of stuff, which is fantastic. I find that Olympic weightlifting, Olympic weight training in that sense, like all the Olympic lifts, it's a plus. It's not a must, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. The reason why I say that is because you have to be able to learn how to move your own body before you learn how to move a bar. And I think that people in the fitness community, how we try to introduce it into our everyday lives, we really don't understand how intricate Olympic lifting is. It's as technical as swimming. So it's a high level skill. And it's similar to running in the sense where you have to be fit in order to do that type of exercise, rather than thinking that exercise is going to make you fit. So when they want to get in shape, let's go out for a run. No, my man, you have to be fit in order to run, rather than thinking that running is going to make you fit. And it's the same thing with Olympic weightlifting. You have to be fit and coordinated in order to lift that weight. And it doesn't work the other way around. So with that in mind, going back a little bit, I include a lot of strength and yoga and movement and infuse it into stroke mechanics, because that's where, in my opinion, that's where I feel as though swimmers can really experience maximum overlap for optimal effect. Where we were before, and what I've experienced, not just as a swimmer, but also just observed other programs, because I've had the good fortune to be able to coach virtually almost in every place in the country. It's not so much dryland as it is entertainment, entertaining and training or dryland. You have to make it interesting. I get that. Coaches want to keep it interesting. You just can't stay in the pool all day long. It gets monotonous. But also you want to be able to get stronger outside of the pool, so you'll have some type of overlap when you jump in the pool. So what do? Either the coach goes on their own and tries to develop their own system, and that usually turns out to be circuit training of some nature, and that shelf life it gets old quick. You start doing the same thing over and over again, and kids are like, okay, and you can't really keep your eye on what everyone's doing. So that's one thing. The second option is, what do? You hire a strength coach or you hire a strength and conditioning trainer, and they start talking to you about the front crawl as opposed to freestyle. You're like, oh man, we're in for like a wild ride today, when they start talking about it and they start talking about swimming in those terms. So being able to engage the swimming community as an athlete, as a lifelong athlete, as a lifetime swimmer, being able to engage the swimming community as a swim coach, being able to engage the swimming community as a fitness trainer, I've been able to, and I've had some fantastic teachers in terms of strength and conditioning and movement, which we'll get into a little bit later. So I've taken all of that and infused it into a system that is safe, that is scalable, and that is sustainable for swimmers, because that's what we need. You need the safety aspect for one, because if it's not safe, it's not worth doing. The risk is not worth the reward. It has to be scalable because you have different levels of ability. You have different morphologies. You have just what some people have maybe have a strong upper body rather than opposed to their lower body. Some people have coordination issues. You have kids that grow up super fast and they're definitely going to have coordination issues. So that's why your exercises have to be safe. They have to be scalable, but also they have to be sustainable. And that's where you actually see your gains in being able to come back time and time again. Because as you know, in your program, you cannot improve unless you work hard. There is no way around it. If you want to improve as a swimmer, you have to work hard. But with that, you want to be able to work smart. And working smart, you have to make sure that your exercises are safe. You have to make sure your exercises are scalable. You have to make sure your exercises are sustainable. And that will give you those incremental gains over the period of time that will help you to reach your goals. A lot of times, because we live in this age where you can just download an app for everything and you get that instant gratification, swimming is not like that. It is a very honest sport. And I say that in the sense that, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a lucky swim. You have the half court shot, that buzzer beater at the end of a basketball game. Football, you have the Hail Mary. It's literally a prayer that you're throwing up in the air. There is no such thing as a lucky swim. So in order to improve, you have to work harder, but your hard work has to be done intelligently. And the way you do that is through being safe, is through keeping your exercises scalable and keeping it sustainable. So, and those are those incremental gains that it's virtually impossible to go wrong with when you're thinking about a dryland program. And that's what I've been developing over these years.
I love the simplicity, right? The piece where you see so many coaches take a wrong turn, in my opinion, is that they have to get all these toys. They need to have all these toys. It's the only way they see that the kids are staying engaged. I have been very fortunate to have some access to what you've been doing. And it's been so different than what we've done in the past. And our kids really, really enjoy it. So how have you developed some of your exercises to keep the kids engaged while not necessarily always going to the med balls, the stretch cords, the sliders? Talk to me a little bit about how you developed your exercises to keep your athletes engaged.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to be able to speak swimming. If you want swimmers to do your exercises, I find that that's the way you keep them the most engaged. And as a swimming community, to touch on what we talked about earlier, just where we were, where we're going, where we are, we've imported a lot of things from the fitness community into our ecosystem, which has basically morphed out of bodybuilding culture, and we've imported it into swimming. And not to knock any type of fitness in that sense, but I'm talking about what works best for swimmers. And muscle isolation for the sake of hypertrophy isn't great for swimmers. It's great if you want to play football and bulk up, or if you're like, hey coach, I need to put on some weight or whatever. I have to be able to hold this frame vertically with the force of gravity holding me down. That's not how swimmers operate. We're horizontal. We work based and we deal with drag force. So the workouts that you need to do are different. So I have that in mind when I'm working when I'm designing my programs or with the program that I've designed. And also getting back to how you need to speak swimming. You find that your swimmers are more engaged, and also you learn better when you can link concepts to things that you already know. We'll get to this in a little bit. For example, with the dry fly that I've been working on, it's easy for swimmers and it's intuitive for them to understand, because you can, as a coach, you can just walk a swimmer through that type of exercise without any disconnect, without any distance of understanding, and that's another thing. For example, if you hire a strength coach that doesn't have a background in swimming or doesn't understand how swimming functions at a high level, you're not able to, you may not be present, for one, so you're operating outside of your own, in a vicinity sense, you're not there, so you don't know what's going on. Operating, that's one thing that's detrimental. The other disconnect can come from not being able to understand what's going on. So the dryland program that's being provided to you is operating outside of your own realm of understanding. And that creates a potential disconnect between coach and swimmer, but also swimmer and performance, which in those things are huge. So being able to create exercises that really bring all those concepts together in the ecosystem that already exists in swimming. It's still evolving. I mean, look at swimmers like Adam Peaty. We have these swimmers that just make a leap, like just do like a huge quantum leap in the sport. We're still evolving. So being able to have something that is simple, it is basic in a sense where you can digest it, and it's already a part of our ecosystem, but we haven't explored it fully. And not only have we not explored it fully, we haven't really taken advantage of all the resources that exist in this ecosystem, so to speak.
I really enjoy listening to you talk about it as an ecosystem, because that's exactly what our sport is, right? It's very unique to the way that you would strength train for other sports. And you make a good point when you talk about Adam Peaty. We look at athletes today in our sport, and their bodies, for lack of a better phrase, are much more fit than what we've even seen in the 90s and in the late 80s. I mean, when you look at a guy like Caleb Dressel, Ryan Murphy, Adam Peaty, when you look at any of the women at the top level in our sport, everybody is fit and strong. So I think it's become this incredibly unique and interesting way to enhance the way that we travel through the water. And I just had a great coach's corner with Jonty, and he's using the same terms that you're using. So I think what we should do now, Atiba, is let you share some of those exercises so that we can see it. You mentioned the dry fly. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure. Okay, let's do it.
Awesome.
Let me just share my screen here with you. It's a good thing that you're editing this, because there's just that period of awkward silence.
We'll edit that right out, buddy.
All right, here we go. These are dry fly push-ups, and it's a combination of butterfly on land. That's why I'm calling it dry fly. So as you can see, we have the recovery portion and the propulsive phase of butterfly done on land. This also works on stroke timing, and we're also engaging all the portions of the body that you would when you're in the water as well. We have the delts, the shoulders, the biceps, triceps. You have to keep your core strong and stable. But also we have, as you notice, I'm using the Pseudo Planche push-up right there. I'll go back and just review that. We can just keep, I'm glad you're editing this once again.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So I'm taking the Pseudo Planche push-up, which is different than a regular push-up. With the Pseudo Planche push-up, you push your arms a little bit farther back. But because you're pushing your arms a little bit farther back, you have to engage your body differently than you would during a normal push-up. But as you can see, this this movement mimics that pseudo planche push-up really mirrors the propulsive phase of butterfly, the end phase, when you're propelling yourself through the water before the recovery. And your body is lifted off the ground after the recovery, and you have to get your head down before your arms come around so you can get that full extension and catch in your stroke, similar to you would in butterfly.
I really like how this is engaging a lot of different muscle groups. Can you talk about what you're shooting for here on this exercise?
What we're looking for is stroke. Keep going back. Hold on. I guess we can just keep looping this as you're playing this. What we're looking for is making sure that we are really working on stroke timing with butterfly, and we are really engaging the shoulders. We are really engaging the biceps, triceps, chest, thinking about the being able to really focus on the propulsive phase of the stroke while still maintaining core strength and core stability, because you have to stay on the water. That's another great thing that swimmers do. Great swimmers swim on the water, not in the water. And having a strong and stable core as you propel yourself through the water it's key for optimal propulsion.
I love it when you're really doing a great job keeping that head in line with the body and not lifting the chin to breathe, so that it is much more similar to being in the water.
Yes. So as a coach, when you're speaking to your swimmers, what is it that you would say, or what is it that you see when you're looking at this?
Yeah, what I love about it is that, again, the similarity to actually being in the water, and an exercise where I'm not lifting my head. And if I did that in the water, my hips are going to sink right down to the bottom. So you're doing a great job taking a water movement and then putting together the principles of strength and conditioning into the stroke specific exercise. That's why I like it.
That's fantastic. Well, and that's the intent, to be able to use body weight, yoga, and infuse it into stroke mechanics for a better conditioned, a more mobile, and more athletic swimmer.
Atiba, talk to us about some of these exercises that you have, and that's my favorite one that our kids love doing, since I stole that from you.
Okay, we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you, talk to the
Do you take it off the screen? Do you want me to take it off screen saving?
No, you can leave it up.
Okay.
Talk to our coaches about why athleticism is so important in this day and age for swimmers.
Oh, good question. Yes, athleticism is actually. I'll take it off so that way you can just see what I'm talking about here.
Well, we love to see you.
What's that?
We love to see you.
Oh. All right. So could you repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah. Talk to us about why athleticism is such a critical component this day and age for our athletes, for our swimmers.
Well, it's not just this day and age. It has always been important. However, the reason why it's so important to keep this in mind today is because we're becoming more sports specific, and we're becoming specialists at an early age, and that's not necessarily a good thing, or that's not necessarily the approach that I take with swimmers, because sometimes when you become a specialist, you really become an onlyist. Just to make up a word on the spot. Yeah, and I don't want the people I work with to become onlyist. Like I said, there's a whole ecosystem to pull from, and also in which we live, that we can thrive in. But the reason why athleticism is important is because we want a holistic approach to swimming. We want a holistic approach to fitness. I heard Dave Salo say this a while back. He said, "I don't want you just to be a great swimmer for 4 years. I want you to be a great human for like the next 20 or whatever." So that's what we're looking for. We want to take out that level of just specificity and because you really shortchange yourself, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. We want to train for speed. We do not want to train for expedience. And training for speed, you have to work on strength. Working on strength, you have to work with coordination. You have to be able to use the body that you have in an integrated way for optimal effect. So having an overall, the workouts that I do are athlete focused, but they are swimmer specific, but they are athletically focused. Everyone has to have a strong and stable core. Everyone, especially swimmers, need to have great access to their shoulders and have a healthy scapula. Everyone posterior chain, because nowadays we live like this. We live like this. We live like that. And we live sitting in a car. We live sitting in chairs all day. We have heavy backpacks that you're taking to school doing this. So we're reversing that. And so so we can sit up straight, have the muscles to make sure that we have great posture so we don't get low back issues. We want to have strong and mobile shoulders so that when you have a challenging practice, and that sustainability comes in, we want to make sure that you have sustainable shoulders. Everyone talks about bulletproof this or bulletproof that. I like to more think about it in terms of sustainable shoulders, not bulletproof shoulders, sustainable shoulders, because we want you to be able to enjoy the sport of swimming for the rest of your life. It is a lifetime sport, and it should be a lifetime sport. And we find a lot of swimmers not being able to enjoy the fruits of their labor later on in life. And that is sad. We don't want that to happen. So making sure that your exercises are safe, scalable, and sustainable, you will be able to do this the rest of your natural life. That is the intention. And we want to be able to, by having this sustainable approach, intention is to help to evolve the sport of swimming. And that's where a part of that, as I said, being the inspiration, being the dedication, and also the obligation. I've had the privilege of having some great teachers, and there is a sense of obligation to give it my best and to keep contributing to hopefully, be worthy enough to stand on the shoulders of those that came before me. And that's the obligation portion that will help evolve the sport beyond you, beyond me, beyond the next generation, and keeps it going strong.
That's a great answer. And it speaks directly to the question: safe, scalable, sustainable, and thinking of your journey in the sport that way also, not just in your approach to the exercises themselves, but really thinking that way long term. I really appreciate that.
That's what it's about. I mean, it's not, we do define, there are certain moments that do define life, or that take us in a certain direction, but having the opportunity to always have access to your full being, it's a gift. I mean, I work with wounded warriors, and we take for granted our bodies. We take for granted the fact that we're stiff and we're just doing this, I'll get through it. We should not be trapped in our bodies. Our bodies should be vehicles of, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, because not everyone has the opportunity to do that. And that should not be something that that should not be a concept that we attach to our age. I'm 43 and I'm doing things that I was not even able to do at 23, if you want to put the age number to it. So, yeah.
No, it's great. And I want to go back and look at my favorite Atiba Wade dryland exercise, which is the open turn side plank.
Oh, the open turn side arch. Yes.
Side arch. Yes.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's do it.
This gets our kids every time.
Yeah. I'm having fun here. I'm really enjoying this.
Well, I knew you would.
All right. Let's all right. All right. So here we have open turn side arches. As you can see, it mimics an open turn. We're really working on core strength, core stability, but also being able to use your strength dynamically. And that's what power is, being able, how quickly can you access your strength? It's a skill. Power is a skill. I mean, we all have different capacities, but this is being able to access your strength quickly and in a coordinated fashion is a skill. But let me just rewind this again. So yeah, we're hitting the side, we're hitting an open turn here, basically. You're extending the body, elbow your brother, call your mother, as they as we all learned when we were younger. And being able to really engage the obliques, being able to have some shoulder mobility and extension in the arms. And that's how you want to go into a turn, basically. My head isn't going really high up, you know, and I'm rolling back, getting the elbow back and really extending into what would be a streamline. And I'm engaging my hips, I'm pushing off the wall. That is what swimmers need to work on.
No
on
doubt
land.
about it.
And this is, yeah, and this is something that is swimmer, it's swimmer specific, but it is athletically focused.
I like how you're keeping everything compact too, just like we would if we were going into the wall. We're staying nice and tight to our body. We're not getting too high. You have that hand sliding right by your ear on the call your mother portion of it. And so I really like it. Now, how high are we supposed to get up as we press up there?
All right. So in this, making sure that you're pressing away from the ground with your shoulder, you don't want to sink into your body. You don't want your body to sink into your shoulder to cause unnecessary strain. But how high do we want those hips? As high as they can go, because we're really working on some range of motion here. And the higher you actually get your hips, because we're fighting against gravity on land, being able to get your hips up is only going to be able to, it only adds to your strength and range of motion. And that's the other thing with being able to scale your exercises. We want you to have, we don't want just an on and off switch when it comes to your strength, when it comes to your power. We want you to be able to have a dimmer switch, so to speak. It's not just on and off. When you're swimming a 200 free, when you're swimming a 400-meter freestyle, you have to have a dimmer switch. You just can't have an on and off switch. So being able to express your strength dynamically, being able to express your strength in a nuanced way, being able to just be strong from A to Z, not just from A to B, really shines through in these exercises.
Atiba, talk to us about why it's important to just take a nice, safe approach with your cadence here. You're not trying to rush these movements at all. As I watch this video, it's really deliberate. So talk to us about why it's important for athletes to take their time. So many times as coaches, we see our athletes in dryland just try to hammer things out. And oftentimes it's just, reinforcing some bad habits and physical literacy that we don't want. So talk to us about why it's important to go at a nice, even-keeled pace here.
All right. It is definitely about the quality of movement, not the quantity of movement. And the better you are at these basic skills, I tell every swimmer that I work with, the best swimmers in the world are the best at the basics. And the better you become at basic skills, the better your skills will, the better athlete you will become. There's no way, I mean, there's no secret sauce. And so being deliberate, being mindful of your movements, it does a few things. For one, it makes you a more competent mover. you actually take the time to read your body's owner manual, basically. But also it exposes any potential strength imbalances that may exist. So when you're going through things in a slow, in a methodical and very mindful approach, you will be aware of what's going on in your body, what's happening, what's not happening, what's firing, what's not firing, what's working, what's stiff, and what's a little bit too loose. So being able to mindfully engage yourself is a huge plus, and that really keeps things safe, because momentum can mask strength. And we don't want to mask any potential strength imbalances, or also we don't want to reinforce any bad habits by masking it with movement. or momentum. So we want these movements to be mindful. We want them to be deliberate. And we really want you to make sure that you're really giving it 100% in terms of the quality of it. So it's quality first, and then we'll worry about the quantity and capacity later of it. So that's what keeps it safe.
The other thing that I can appreciate about your movement here in this exercise in particular, the open turn side arch, there's a flexibility component here. Talk to us about flexibility.
Yes. Do you want me to keep playing this, or
we can jump back to you?
Okay. Because I have to. Because like the reason why I'm doing that, it's not on a loop. I just keep rewinding it back.
I got you.
All right. Okay. So flexibility is important for swimmers because it keeps you strong from A to Z, and that's a safety thing. It's not just for an aesthetic. It's not just for, to see how far you can lift your leg above your head or whatever. We're not doing that. We want to be able to use your strength dynamically from A to Z. And sometimes, and that's why, once again, that's why all your exercises have to be scalable. Some people are more strong than they are flexible. Some people are more flexible than they are strong. And when someone tries to be strong, when they're reaching their nth degree of flexibility, something snaps. And vice versa, when someone is super strong and then they try to express their strength outside of that range of motion in which they're comfortable, something happens. So we want to be able to incorporate flexibility and strength based off of whatever it is that you need, because not everyone is the same. It's not cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter approach. That's why your exercises have to be safe and scalable, because you have some swimmers that they have hyper flexible shoulders, but then you have swimmers that are just like super strong. So if they don't meet in the middle somewhere, or if they don't take the strength, if the flexible person doesn't take that strength approach to balance themselves, and if that strength person doesn't take that flexibility aspect to strengthen to balance themselves, we're going to have a problem. So it's not just about flexibility on its own that makes a swimmer great, because some swimmers are already super flexible. We need a balance of strength and flexibility, and that's what my intention is to infuse into these exercises.
I know you're also very passionate about yoga and you practice yoga. How do you incorporate yoga into the dryland training that a swimming athlete might need?
Oh, yes. Like I said, the swimming ecosystem is vastly unexplored in terms of strength and conditioning, and in terms of where we can go as a sport. And we just don't have to import other ideas into what we're doing. Swimming is movement. There is a natural yoga element into it. For example, when I was doing the dry fly push-ups, I started off in the locust pose, being able to, so your arms are back, and lotus pose, locust, sorry. So we're back there in that position. Guess what? You're finishing your fly and your back is slightly, you're pushing yourself forward, your legs are extended. That's butterfly, man. So there are already things that exist that we can really amplify as a community, and amplify as an ecosystem in dryland. It's already there. We just, in my opinion, we have to distinguish, and we have to really focus on being racehorses rather than workhorses. A workhorse will not be mindful of the movements that they're doing. Hence the term, use you like a rented mule in that sense, or whatever. You don't treat a racehorse the same way you treat a workhorse. And you see these great swimmers, they perform. They look like racehorses, basically. But the whole let's grind it out type thing, that why there's no reason for swimmers to have these injuries. There's no reason for these swimmers to be at the end of their sport when they retire, or have to retire prematurely due to an injury. We're not in the gym trying to crank it out every single day. We're not there's no reason for that to happen if you have a mindful approach and a safe, scalable, and sustainable approach to your dryland. There's no reason for it. So to get back to the yoga thing, being able to position, hold, breathe, being able to be in union, as the Sanskrit word yoga means yoke or in union. So what are you in union with? That yoga allows you to explore that that whole process. Are you you should be in union with your breathing when you're moving through the water, so you don't activate the lizard survival portion of your brain, which gives you access to all of your cognitive capacity. You know, we call underwater fly kick the fifth stroke, but I call breathing the sixth sense because it gives you access to all the other senses. You know, so that's why I consider breathing the sixth sense. And if you're in union with your breathing, while you are operating at a high level of speed and fatigue, having access to that sixth sense or being engaged with that sixth sense gives you access at an optimal scale to all the rest of your senses. Because like, just think about it, when you're excited, you're like, or when you're depressed, you're like, you know, but being able to stay centered in your breathing while you're moving, that's something that's great for yoga, from just, you know, that mind-body connection portion, but also just from a functionality portion. How does it transfer? Where's the overlap in swimming? The flexibility, being able to engage your body with strength and flexibility and mindfulness. It's a no-brainer.
You said something earlier that you just described. Earlier, you said you want to be more in tune with your body's user manual. And I thought to myself that's a really interesting perspective. And while I thought it was a really interesting perspective, I didn't understand it then. I now have a much better idea of what you mean by reading your body's user manual. Talk to us, Atiba, a little bit about how you've learned to control your breathing, and what are some breathing exercises that athletes and coaches can do with their teams?
Well, while you're doing yoga, for example, it's a way to really just shut it down a bit, but also engage a bit. You know, and that's what you need to do when you're actually swimming, because you can't fight the water, because every time you fight the water will always win. So we want to be able to take that type of aspect, that being able to work in harmony and with union with the water, with yourself. And yoga is a great way to do that. So I'm not a breath control guide to say, hey, this is what you need to do in order to work on your breathing. But what you can do while you are practicing yoga, for example, is just to be mindful of your breathing. And instead of trying to control it, observe it. And that gives you that level of just letting go a bit. You know, sometimes you don't always need to compete at a 10. Sometimes you need to bring it down to a 9 or an 8 in order to release all of your potential, you know, getting out of your own way. And sometimes just being an observer, just being and keeping that ego, or keeping your mind in a custodial capacity rather than, you know, being engaged, allows you to take a step back and really allows you to really flow into what it is that you want to accomplish.
It's really important, I think, for our coaches and our athletes to understand that learning to do that and learning to just be mindful in those moments of exercise, whether it's at a high level of intensity or even if it's, you know, somewhere in the middle, it's such an important go-to skill. I lost them.
I'm here.
Oh, I got you. Oh, we're gonna need to edit that out.
Oh, okay.
It's such an important mindful skill when you might be in moments of anxiety and pre-race anxiety and things like that. So, you know, we're always talking to our athletes in those about those moments where, you know, pre-meet or pre-race, their minds are running at a million miles an hour. So how do you talk to some of your fitness clients, or what was your experience as an athlete? You know, you competed at a very high level at NCAAs. What were some of the tricks of the trade that you used?
Well, that has been an evolving process for me, because you have to consider, without getting into a protracted discussion about all this other stuff, where I was at 23 is different than where I was at 43, or where I am at 43, for example. So my priorities were different, perspective was different, what triggered me was different. But in terms of what would I say, in terms of like an overarching type of theme, what would I share that would have maximum overlap would just at times you just need to be an observer, because a lot of times we react to our emotions, we react to certain environmental stressors and triggers, but in that split second when you are reacting or you are about to react, that's when you should become an observer and allow a part of yourself, allow that ego or allow that part of your conscious brain just to operate in a custodial capacity and just step back and be an observer. And a lot of times, like for example, if you are doing dryland workouts or if you're doing yoga, and particularly yoga, it gives you the opportunity while you are moving to just be an observer of your breathing. Because if you hit a pose, for example, and you find yourself stressing or you find yourself just not breathing, you need to take a moment and just be an observer of your breathing. Allow the breathing to just flow through any type of tension that you may be experiencing. I'll say that tension that you might be experiencing, and just by being an observer and moving out of the way of yourself allows for that breathing to flow through. And then you practice that, you do that in practice. Guess what? You're gonna do that at a meet. You may be triggered by something in an environment, and maybe another swimmer, and you're like, whoa. You may be just watching how they're performing and then compare themselves to yourself. And I always tell my swimmers and everyone I work with, comparison is the thief of joy. You really need to make sure that you are figuratively and literally staying in your own lane. So, and by removing your ego, by really just, as I said, is observing your breathing, gives you a chance to step back. And instead of reacting, it really gives you a chance to observe, and then you can engage it less subjectively. I say less subjective instead of just being more objective, because if you consider objectivity as absolute zero, you can't be more zero. So but you can be less subjective. So being less subjective and kind of mutes that triggering mechanism that you may be experiencing whenever something in the environment happens that engages your ego.
Sure. No, I think that's incredibly insightful advice. Atiba, when you talk about coaches writing their own dryland program, and you and I have kind of laughed about this the last couple of weeks as I've told you our experience, you're thinking safe, scalable, sustainable. But what are the three really important things that coaches could consider? If you had to choose three things outside of those, what do you want these coaches to consider when writing a dryland program?
Well, I mean, you can't, those three things, they're all, you can't have one without the other. So let me just say, if I were to just take one thing, it would just be mindfulness with your approach. Because guess what? If you're doing something that's not sustainable, guess what? It's not safe. And that's scalable, then it's not sustainable. But I guess, well, let me just back that up. I guess the one thing will have to be safety, because that's the most important thing. Because if it's not safe, then it can't be, you can't scale it. If it's not safe, it's not sustainable. So safety has to be the main component. After you start from there, it has to be safe. Safety first, as they say. So it has to be safe first. And then you can build out and ask yourself the questions about how can I engage these athletes? But that's what makes it challenging for coaches. As a head coach, I'm sure that you find yourselves having coaching the last thing that you do. Just speaking with coaches, it's like, man, I have to not only have to write the workouts, you have to make sure meets are, if you're hosting a meet, that's another headache. Well, not a headache, but that's another thing you have to worry about. Maintenance pool maintenance, administrative things, just the bones of the whole building that need to be supported in order for you just to do your job. And let's not talk about, the other stuff that goes on, interpersonal relationships between swimmers and group dynamics. You have to be at the helm of all that. And then it's like, okay, now is all that stuff done? All right, here's what we're doing today. And your mind is already engaged in all those other factors. Like, I hope that heater is working. I hope the pool is. Did I turn up that pump, or is this? All those different things that are going on, instead of just being able to focus on this highly nuanced concept of dryland work. Because if it's not safe, and if it's not scalable, if it's not sustainable, those are things that you really have to be mindful about when you're implementing a dryland program. And my heart goes out to, I've been a coach, I've coached almost everywhere, but and that's what I've observed. Watching other great head coaches, I'm like, man, that's wow. So yeah, safety first. If you have to take away one thing, safety first.
There's a couple.
I kind of went off there, but
no,
there's a lot. There's a lot there.
That's great stuff. A couple, misnomers I think that a lot of people have with dryland. A lot of coaches like to have their athletes do some running. A lot of coaches don't like their athletes to do some running. Where do you fall on that running spectrum?
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of necessarily saying, all right, let's go out there and run people. A lot of things, swimmers are not notoriously known for our athletic prowess. And so many things can go wrong when we are vertical.
For sure.
In terms of running itself, it's not, like I said, you have to be fit in order to run. Running does not necessarily make you fit. And once again, safety first. So if I have an athlete that does not have the structural capacity to just be able to pound, because every time you take a step, that's like 3 times your body weight on each leg. If my form isn't great, and guess if I'm a swimmer, my ankles are super, if all that's happening, it's not really great. And also just hip placement for males versus females, all this stuff. It's not, if you don't have great form, it's not, you could potentially, I'm not saying this is going to happen every single time. That's why I'm just saying that potentially you could really hurt your athlete by asking them to run great distances if you are not training for a triathlon. And consequently, that's why swimmers, whenever we try triathlons, we do great, because swimming, everyone will run, but not everyone swims well, and that's where we crush everyone. But we also have the cardiovascular capacity to just to crank it out, But there's a little joke about triathletes. How do you make a triathlete?
How?
The answer is you take a runner that got hurt and has a bike and wants to learn how to swim.
That's true. In my experience,
but I heard that joke. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, in terms, there's so many other things that we can do as a community to improve our cardiovascular fitness outside of the pool. That's why I made these dryland programs. There's different ways that you can lift that will challenge you in that way as well. We get enough of that stuff in the pool. Swimming is tough in terms of just the cardio output alone. So, but there are things that you can do to strengthen yourself as a swimmer, that you can move in a way that is athletically focused and swimmer specific, that really helps you, that you can use cardiovascularly outside of the pool. And there's some other exercises that definitely have in my arsenal will challenge swimmers to do that.
Yeah, I'm excited to find out more about those, man. You've got so many things that are so interesting to watch. How old before we start doing dryland with our athletes?
Well, like it or not, we're already doing dryland as soon as you can walk. We talk about like bone growth and all this other stuff, but when your kid is on the playground jumping off of a 4-foot jungle gym and they're hitting the ground and then jumping up, that's plyometrics. You know, so we're doing dryland from a very young age. The thing that gets lost is our ability to play as we get older, because we're told that's not what's supposed to happen. And but yeah, you're doing dryland from day one, you know, and like I'm saying, it's your workouts have to be scalable. You're scaling yourself up from a crawl to a walk. I mean, there's so much that goes into walking, and after that you're always doing dryland. But in terms of what type of dryland, that's a different story. But when should you start doing dryland? You're doing dryland from day one, like it or not. So that's my answer to that.
Well, I think it's important for coaches to understand that aspect of play when they develop their dryland. You know, this year, for the first time, I was encouraging our coaches to let the kids play Frisbee, let the kids, play water polo in the diving well. Not the older groups, but the younger kids for sure. And I think it was a really good exercise for them. You know, discovery through play, I think, is so important.
Yes, and being able to really explore power output. I mean, the ability to accelerate, whether it be how hard can you throw a med ball, how high can you jump, how quickly can you do this movement or that movement. Being able to work on acceleration is huge. Also, being able to work on proprioception, being able to balance, that is huge for kids. I grew up doing gymnastics swimming. So if someone said, hey, what 2 sports should kids learn? I would say swimming and gymnastics. Because they're similar. You have to, when you're horizontal and your flow of the water so different, you have to have a level of awareness. Your body is in a totally different, it's literally in a different element. So yeah, you're in a different element. But in terms of gymnastics, it's so great because you have that, you really learn, like I said, that owner's manual, you really get access to that. Being able to operate while inverted, being able to operate and function still at a high level when you're flipping, being able to access your core horizontally while dealing with the forces of gravity. I mean, gymnasts are phenomenal athletes. Well, there's a phenomenal athletic component to that. So being able to being able to get your kid into a gymnastics class as a swimmer, that's something that I'm happy that I did gymnastics at a young age, because it's something that literally I've taken throughout my whole life. Like, I haven't done gymnastics since I was like 8 or 9, but I could still pop out backflips and all this other stuff. But yeah, I feel very comfortable in whatever space I'm in because I got the best of worlds in that sense.
I've seen a lot of Polaroid to great gymnasts correlation to turning out to be great swimmers. There's a lot of that in our sport, and we see it all the time. The other question that I wanted to ask you in terms of dryland, sprinters, middle distance swimmers, should any group be doing more? I mean, I know we're trying to decategorize our training this day and age, but what's your approach to that?
And it depends on the athlete. You have some swimmers that are like just naturally muscular. You have some sprinters that just have great feel, man. I mean, they're long, they're lanky, and they just have great feel for the water. And you don't want to necessarily burden that natural flow with saying, all right, now do this, you got to get in there. So who needs more, who needs less? It's definitely, well, in my opinion, it is situational. But as long, and I sound like a broken record, seriously, but as long as the exercises you're doing are safe, scalable, and sustainable, you can't go wrong. You have to think about also the intention of what the athlete needs. You may have a distance swimmer that is super flexible and they need to get some strength. the what you would have them do would be different than, hey, this fast twitch, super strong sprinter who is like 6 feet tall at age 12. It's going to be different than, all that other stuff, so you really have to just, as a coach, that's the art and the science of coaching. You have to make that call, and you have to tailor that to the swimmer.
I love it, Atiba. I'm ready to do quick fire with Atiba Wade if you're ready. All right.
All right, it should be interesting.
Here we go. More intimidating on the pool deck, Jim Ellis or Jack Bowerly?
Jim Ellis.
100 times in a row, right? All right.
Yeah, and the only reason I say that is because I just growing up, I grew up in that program, and Jim was like a parent. When you're a little kid and you see your parents, it's in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Jack is intense on the pool deck, and he is super passionate. So, and I met Jack at a different stage in life, so that's why I say that.
All right, fair enough. Okay, it's the early to mid 90s. You probably just did 10,000 with Jim in a practice. He says to you and Michael Norman, "All right, boys, we're getting up on the blocks. 50 breaststroke." Now, the 50 breaststroke might be a little bit more in your wheelhouse than his. Who's winning that? Or did this actually happen?
Mike. Oh, yeah. I mean, let me just tell you, Jim would have this thing where we would just get up and sprint. It's not even a get out swim. That's the thing. Jim never did get out swims. We are like, and I agree with that. I mean, he never did get out swims. It's like, all right, we did the work we had to do. Now it's go time. You got to step up, dig deep, and perform. And if it was, sometimes we do it. You never knew how many times you'd be doing this race, but you did. The only time you did know is when he would say, "1 time for a dime." So
that's what he'd say.
Yeah, Jim would always say that, 1 time for a dime. Yeah, 1 time for a dime. Mike Norman would smoke me 10 times out of 10.
How good. When I clip this up, I'm going to send that to him. Real quick, men's 50 freestyle in Tokyo. Does it have to take a sub 20-second performance to win the gold medal?
No.
That's kind of where everybody's leaning right now. All right. And we all know who this athlete
is. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah. We all know who we're talking about here, but does the women's 800 freestyle, does the world record go down, and is it sub 8 minutes?
Ooh, man. Oh man, all hail the queen, Kayla Decky, man. We have to just decide on, hey, what she's had for breakfast that morning, because if she's ready to go, man, all hail the
Tony Bates
queen.
From
she can do whatever she wants to do in the water.
Yeah, Tony Bates from Palo Alto said, he had the best answer. He said, "I think if she's getting pushed early on in the race, then you're going to see her go way under 8 minutes." Gonna be fun to watch either way.
Hey, you can't argue with that. Yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch.
All right, Atiba, this is where you and I shamelessly plug what we've been working on for the last 6 months, and that's our strength and athleticism classes. You're gonna do a couple for us. We're gonna have a month-long class and a 2-month-long class, and it's gonna be specifically tailored for swimmers ages 10 to 12 and 13 and over. So give us your pitch for why this is a great opportunity for athletes, especially many swimmers across the country who don't have a pool to swim in.
Okay. Well, any opportunity that you can take advantage of that will make you a better swimmer, you should do it. Simple. We're going to be covering some basic skills. And I just keep saying this, the best swimmers in the world are the best at the basics. And there's some things that we overlook as swimmers, and we're going to make sure that we expose you to different types of movement, different types of strength, mobility, and conditioning work that is highly transferable for your swimming performance. in a way that is safe, a way that is scalable, and a way that is sustainable. And beyond that, I'm going to just tell you to sign up, and I can tell you confidently that you can walk away a better swimmer than you did when you walked in.
I'm so excited for it, man. I can't wait to get all of the people who take your course. I can't wait to hear their feedback because I know they're going to be thrilled. We're really proud of the work that we put into it. And I'm so thankful, Atiba, that you joined me today. It's been so great to get to know you and spend a lot of time together over the past couple months virtually. But I know our paths will cross. How can people get a hold of you if they're interested? If they're interested in bringing you in for a Fitter and Faster clinic, or if a coach has a question, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, social media is always great, but since I'm working with my company's working with Fitter and Faster, you can feel free to reach out to Fitter and Faster. They'll reach out to me, but feel free to look me up online, not just at Atiba Wade, but also my own strength conditioning thing that I work on, H2Go Fitness. Like that, subscribe, all that different types of stuff. But yes, if you want to get in contact into a clinic, contact Fitter and Faster, and we'll take care of you. Not just with swimming, we could also do the dryland component, whatever it is that you need.
Well, Atiba, we really appreciate your time. I have really enjoyed getting to know you, and I know that together we're going to do some great things with this class. So thank you so much for being on Coach's Corner today. This episode will be available for all of our fans on our Fitter and Faster site under the webcast tab, Coach's Corner. You can always check it out on our YouTube channel. Also, please click subscribe. And Atiba, thanks so much. Look forward to talking with you soon. And listen, man, you have a happy holiday.
You do the same, Mike. And thanks for having me.
Can't wait to talk soon, guys. All right, we'll check out Atiba. It's going to drop on Wednesday. Take care, Atiba.